Hello, everybody. I hope you're doing well. I thought that today I would live stream the three things in podcasting because I didn't do another live stream today. So if you're listening to this post live stream on the feed, you can click a link in the description to subscribe to my YouTube channel so you know when I go live. But otherwise, this is three things in podcasting for July 19th. I know this is weird because I'm recording this on July 18th. It's going to get released on July 19th, though. So, anyway, I've got three things in podcasting. It was kind of a light week for me. I try not to cover the same stories that everybody's covering. That said, both of these stories I came across in the usual places, Pod News, the podcast host, and things like that. So that's okay because I think these are two really good stories. The third one is one I wrote, so I'll apologize in advance for the shameless self-promotion, but I think it's a really good story worth covering in three things in podcasting. But we're going to save that for the third thing. So let's start with number one. Podcasts replace bells. That's really weird. The full headline that I didn't fit on the card is Mini Pods Educational Podcasts Drive Funding for Classrooms. And so I thought that this was a very interesting use case for podcasts. ABF Creative, the award-winning producer of Kids and Family Podcast, is proud to announce an innovative Mini Pods initiative. What they're doing, it says it right here, is replaces traditional school bells with 30-second educational podcasts. This is currently in 120 New York City public schools, with plans to expand to Chicago and Los Angeles. I think that this is a real interesting concept. First of all, because I hate the sound of school bells, but also it's giving students kind of something to listen to as they're changing classrooms. Now, I'm an old, I'm 38 years old, and so we didn't. And I also went to a Catholic school, so we weren't like allowed to do anything. But if I wanted to listen to something while I was changing classes, I'd have to listen to a Sony Discman, a portable CD player, which if you're moving is terrible. I always thought it was really funny that you'd have like these like run with your Walkman band, because that's crazy. Like that's just not something that any reasonable person would do. And like I know now that students have like they're always wearing God, I sound like such an old now. I'm trying to adjust my lighting a little bit. But I know students have I have friends who work in schools and they say that students are always wearing headphones, right? And so like maybe this is a way to combat that a little bit. Like I don't know. That's like pure theory. Or maybe it's like not even in high schools, right? But anyway, let's continue with this article because I think it's really interesting. Integrates short educational content into the daily school routine, promoting literacy and engagement among students. Launched in February, this program has already made significant impact, garnering 20 million impressions and averaging nearly 5 million impressions per month. Positive reviews from educators highlighting improvements in literacy and comprehension among students. So I think it's very weird that the first thing this press release mentions is like, it's garnered so many impressions. Like, yeah, it's like forced listening, right? Like you have a captive audience. So this is not impressive to me. If this is true, improvements in literacy and comprehension among students, that is interesting. And something I didn't see in this article or this press release is what schools it's in. So like I mean, I guess it's reasonable to assume high schools because high schools is where you're most likely to switch classes. But I think, I think I was switching classes as early as, or I guess you would still have school bells even if you weren't switching classes. But like, I don't know how much podcasting helps second graders. So I would like to see like the age range of the students and a little bit more data for more information about this transformative initiative. Revolutionizes the classroom routine. So like this is interesting to me. Oh, it even says captive audience. They literally say that right here on the page. So anyway, I wanted to highlight this story because I think it's really interesting. It's a unique way to get podcasts in front of more people. Um, I guess depending on the grade, it's Gen Z or Gen Alpha. But I know like Gen Z is all about podcasts even more than us millennials. Millennials like me, I should say. Um, so I thought this was really interesting, really unique way to apply podcasting by like just replacing a bell with some helpful content. Okay, so the next story that I want to cover here is has to do with guest and authority. This is a topic that I think about a lot. So this is from Katie Patterson over at the podcast host. How to showcase expert guests without sacrificing your authority. I won't read the whole article, of course, but um, the first tip from Gabe from Board Game Design Lab. Key takeaway: don't be scared to share your own knowledge. It's about creating balance and learning how to self-regulate your input. This is the main advice that I give to people who have an interview show but still want to increase their authority. So what I'll generally tell them is, okay, you need to create that opportunity though. So have someone that you can have a conversation with and then interject your own expertise. This could be tough, right? Because if you're, I'm a podcast coach. I guess it's not really that tough actually, right? Like when I was on Crystal Profits podcast, for example, or I'm going on, I'll be on a couple of other podcasts later this month with podcast producers. It was very conversational, right? We can kind of key off of each other and talk more about it. Crystal came on my podcast too. And so it's about having a conversation and establishing your authority and expertise alongside theirs, right? Your audience already trusts you. And so when you have a guest, you're lending your trust to the guest and you can help them deliver better content by having more of a discussion instead of just a profile. So I thought this article was really good. I think this is really good, right? Gabe says it's actually been a little bit of a challenge. There are times when I interview someone that I'm actually more of an expert. But it's good to get other input, right? So as you become more of an authority, it's hard who are bigger. I mean, I guess this is fine. Like you don't need to have a guest who's bigger. I think you just need to have a guest who has a different perspective from you, right? Because this is the other thing. I just recognize I'm like reading the article and I don't have it up, but this is the other thing. Different people are going to value different things, and so maybe your guest doesn't like the way you do something, or prefers a different approach, or they're at a different stage. I'm sorry, a listener, like a potential customer, right? Someone who's listening. And so you're offering them an alternative, or you're showing them that you can be the alternative. I think that's fine. And like Vicky says right here, I'll bring up the story again for those watching. It's not about who's the bigger expert, but about using your platform to share knowledge and experiences. This is it. right? Different experiences, different perspectives. That's why you're bringing other people on. And then Andrea from Mindful Marketing, Andrea or Andre, yeah, Andrea. Oh, I know. Stupid. I know Andrea. Um, um, invite guests who think or do things differently than you do. This is my favorite tip of the article, right? Because you still get to showcase your expertise, and then you get to offer that other perspective. So if you have an interview show, I think the main takeaways here, right, are first of all, like, don't really worry about competition per se. You can compete in the pitching phase, right? Or you can compete in Google, right? But when you invite somebody onto your podcast, it's about having a discussion. It's not about like seeing who can be the bigger expert. And so you'll have to do some research on your guests and ask them good questions that you can start conversations with and add your input to and say, oh, that's interesting. I actually do it this way. Never heard that. And also don't be afraid to push back a little bit, right? It could be friendly while also offering different perspectives. I think a really good example of this actually is Bill O'Reilly just went on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. They've had like a long, maybe tenuous relationship, but they are always respectful of each other and they always go on the show and like, yeah, they rib each other, but they don't let each other get one past each other, if that makes sense, right? So Bill will say something and Jon will push back. Jon will say something, Bill will push back. And it's honestly like you can find one more disagreeable than the other, but I think it's a good interview. And Jon and Bill are obviously both good interviewers and have been in the field a long time, but you don't have to fully agree with your guest. And you also, you can prop them up on your platform. I think that you can have both of those things. And as long as you're creating really good content for your audience, that's the win, right? The win is good content, helpful content. So, all right. And let's get to the last thing. The last thing is an article I wrote called Overcoming the 7 Deadly Sins of Podcasting. It's really long, and I will have an episode that's going to be like an audio version of this article. So it'll have chat. That's also going to be long just because it's like, I probably read like 800 words. Nope. I probably read like 100 words a minute, and it's 3,300 words. So you can do the math there. I'll have chapter markers. But anyway, this is over at podcastworkflows.com/sins. I'll have all of the links in the description for this episode. But it's basically an article I wrote because I was thinking about the 7 deadly sins, as I often do. I wouldn't say it's my Roman Empire, but it's something mostly because I really like the movie Seven. But I don't know. It comes across my mind from time to time. And I thought, I wonder what the 7 deadly sins of podcasting look like. And so I'll skip to this kind of summarizing graphic that I have at the bottom. But we've got lust, which is chasing the current fad. Gluttony, which is saying my show is for everyone. Greed, which is putting revenue above your audience. Sloth, which is not editing your podcast. Wrath, which is creating controversy for clicks. Envy, which is chasing downloads. And pride, which is doing everything yourself. So I had a lot of fun writing this article and creating these graphics, and I'm going to really milk it for the content. No, and I really want to put it out there because I think, I put a lot of thought into this. This is not just something I wrote in a day. It took me like a week to flesh out the concept and then maybe 2 weeks to really write it. For all those people who are saying, oh, you can write a book in a day. No, you can't. Not a good book. Let's see if I wanted to create wrath. If I was being wrathful right now, I would dive into that more. But so anyway, I put a lot of effort into this, and I'm very pleased with the way it came out. I keep finding spelling errors that I need to fix and stuff, not like grammar errors, which is wild because I sent this to a bunch of people to read, and there was not a lot of feedback on that. No, not that I asked those people to like proofread it, but nothing was so glaring that like a handful of people caught it. But anyway, really pleased with the way it came out. I kind of tell you like what the deadly sin is in podcasting, or like what it is and then how it applies to podcasting, and then how to avoid that deadly sin. So it's not just like, "Wait, you're doing everything wrong." It's like, "Hey, we all have done this stuff before, and here's how you can avoid it." So really excited this is out. I'll be pushing out more content around this over the next few weeks. My mailing list is going to get it first. So if you want to sign up for my mailing list, it's over at podcastworkflows.com/join. Again, I'll have the links to everything in the description below. If there's something you want me to cover on this, send me an email, joe@casabona.org, or leave a comment. I'm always looking for stuff. And especially like the summer weeks, summer months are usually a little lighter, last week notwithstanding. But you know, the summer months are a little lighter because everyone's traveling and things like that. Podcast movement is next month, so I'm sure I'll have a lot to report then. Maybe I'll do a live show from there. But yeah, if you have something for me to write about, let me know. But the best way to stay in touch, podcastworkflows.com/join, or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. But that's it for this episode. Thanks so much for watching or listening. Thanks so much for consuming this, however you are consuming it. And until next time, I'll see you out there.